I was still young when I went to prison.
How do you approach the balance between beauty and pain in your work?
Color would hold the greatest manifestation. Kinder Bogassian, the great artist, we did outdoor sculpture for the Ethiopian Embassy in Washington, D.C.
How did your experience in the concentration camp influence your art?
The Holocaust Museum, I created that artwork that the title is The River in Rwanda. The Red Cross people actually helped to smuggle the manuscript out, and my first poetry book was published.
Do you have any intention of coming to Ethiopia to teach? Good afternoon. This is your Pan-African show called Afreeqa with your host Qatsalawrq Seifu. Yet again, we come to you with another amazing guest that we are luckily getting an opportunity to talk to. Welcome to our studio.
Thank you for having me.
If you could please tell us who you are and a little bit about yourself.
My name is Kebedech Tekleab. I am a visual artist and also a poet and educator. I grew up here in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, and I went to the United States in 1990 after my repatriation from the Somalia prison. Then I studied at Howard University. I studied art. I graduated in 1995, and I started teaching both at Howard University and the surrounding community colleges in the beginning. Then full-time at Howard University. I went to Savannah, Georgia to teach at Savannah College of Arts and Design. Then I moved to New York, and currently I'm teaching at the City University of New York. And currently I live in the United States, and I'm visiting right now.
Beautiful. Again, we say welcome. So I'm going to take you back to high school. So when you finished high school, also if you could tell us what school you went to. And then I think you were in the student movement. And then if you could tell me a little bit about that and how you ended up in the Somali prison.
I went to Prince Wassan Sagad School. That's where I went to study elementary, lessons. Then I transferred to Prince Makonnen School. I think it has a different name now. Lul Makonnen. Then I went to the Fine Arts School of Addis Ababa in Arat Kilo. I studied art for 2 years, and that was during the revolution. And I was involved, as you mentioned, in the student movement. And I was a member of the Youth League for EPRP, the Ethiopian Revolutionary Party. And as you know, that period was really very difficult. Anybody who were actually opposing the junta, the Derg regime, would be incarcerated or, killed, sometimes. And a lot of people died because of that. And at the peak of the Red Terror, the infamous Red Terror, I had to leave the country. And with a group of students like me, we tried to go to Djibouti in the beginning. That was the plan. And that was around the end of 1970s. 79, 78, then we tried to go to Djibouti. That didn't happen because of the border conflict between Ethiopia and Somalia. And at that time, even though we didn't know, the Western Somalia Liberation Movement people were actually advancing, to the border area and were caught. So whole plan changed, and were forced to go to Somalia.
So that's how you ended up in Somalia. So you were there for 10 years.
Correct.
This was through your teens, basically, right?
Yes.
And up to your 20s. So how did your experience in the concentration camp influence your art?
It has a great deal of, influence. When I was studying at the Fine Arts School of Addis Ababa, we started learning through the canons of what we call realism, depicting nature around you. That includes, human portraiture or nude, etc. But once I got to, Somalia's prison, my interest grew more than, depicting people. And the conditions that we were in became my subject matter. And of course, when I was in concentration camp, I was not able to draw or paint or do anything. So the most accessible, outlet was writing. So I started writing, when I was in prison, but even before that, I used to write when I was in high school, etc. So it served me as an outlet when I was in prison. So I wrote several, poems. Of course, I mean, writing and reading was prohibited.
Oh, well.
Yes, it was completely against the rule of the prison. But I wrote quite a lot, and those writings were published after we repatriated, to Ethiopia through the Red Cross people actually helped, to smuggle the manuscript out. And my first poetry book was published that way in 1990.
Wow. How did you find the strength to continue your journey from Ethiopia to Washington?
That happened because my family left home in early 1980s. Okay. And they had to migrate to, my sister and my mother went to Germany first. But prior to that, two of my brothers went to study, in America. And they finished school there, and that coincided with the revolution. Oh, okay. So my mother and sister had to leave home because of the condition in Addis Ababa, or in general in Ethiopia. So when I was repatriated, I learned about my older brother who went to the US and graduated from University of California, and learned about my disappearance. And my family also, left home. So he took it upon himself to find me. He was extremely determined. And he took this huge, huge risk going back to Addis. And he found all my, connections, friends, etc. So he had to go all the way to Asimba, or, those areas. Wow. Then he couldn't leave the country because still that was the Derg's time. Wow. So when the Red Cross, found us, in that concentration camp, I was told some of my family members are in America, and the list did not include my brother's name. And I asked about, him. And finally, they researched, and they told me he lives in Addis Ababa. So immediately I knew that he had no business to go back home except for, to look for me. So I decided, to be back, to be repatriated to Ethiopia first. Then I had to meet the rest of my family and continue my education, there. So that's how I ended up.
In the US?
Yes, yeah.
So how was the transition after going through what you went through in the refugee camp, coming to Addis, and then going to the States? Because the time that you went to the States, also, America also had their own issue, right? So how was that for you?
The transition was not easy because 10 years is, huge in anybody's life. And I was still young, when I went to prison. So first of all, I needed to fills that huge gap, which was created during my absence from the whole world. You can say, you can say. So I always tell people who want to know about my beginning, the transition could have been even worse, but luckily I had a great deal of support from my family, and my friends, my professors, etc., really contributed hugely to my transformation. And I came at the end of '89, and I started attending classes at Howard already in 1990. So the gap was very, tight at that time, but, school helped a lot.
How do you approach the balance between beauty and pain in your work?
Interesting, question. It's really philosophical. The best example that I could give is how do poets write about tragedy? So does that poetry, has to be really shocking? You can do that. That's a choice. And there is also another way of talking about tragic situations, depending on what the writer or the artist would like to do with that discipline. So my choice was to be able to talk about the issues soberly, without creating this huge shock or anything like that. But dealing with aesthetics, acknowledging or respecting what good formal beauty is, then the rest is going to be subtle and subliminal, and that is the kind of path I wanted to follow. Of course, there are a lot of things that we can talk about in terms of the use of nuances that are less obvious, like the presence of texture and what it means, in the arts. The same way, texture would be evidently perceived in music or things like that. Color is another issue that anybody would like to consider as an artist, and I would be selective about those elements. And most of my paintings, depending on the content of those specific artworks, color would hold the greatest manifestation, and I use it seriously, considering what it's meant to me.
Brilliant. Can you share a moment from your time at Howard University that was particularly transformative for you?
Mm-hmm. I don't think it's only one. I mean, multiple.
I'm sure there's a lot. Yeah. I couldn't ask for all.
Well, in general, I would say finding my mentors and my teachers was transformative, and I always remember the beginning of those relationships with my mentors, how I met them, and etc. So I would say finding those people were something special and transformative.
Can you tell us one or two of your mentors?
The first person that I met and I always think about is Professor Abi Ford, and he was the first person that took me as his own family, and very open about things that that are around the world, and how to, in terms of helping me how to navigate in general in this new world of mine. So his contribution was huge. I assume you know him.
Yes, I did. I got the pleasure. Yes.
Yes, and he was a multifaceted artist, and he was a filmmaker, and he's well-read. He knows world history and also African American and Ethiopian history. He himself played piano and the djembe drum, etc. So his knowledge of music was expansive, and I benefited from all that. And last time when I was presenting, I was telling the audience that great mentors don't act like one. Because he was just as if he was my friend, and he was so close to me. So that's one. And the second one is Kinder Bogassian, the great artist, phenomenal. I always refer to him as a quiet person but extremely intelligent. He's a person who is also fun, to be around, because he never took himself seriously. He's just a true artist. I liked everything about him. The fact that even his conversation is not it is not didactic and it's not sequential. Yeah. So he can go all over places and he can come back to the main idea. Similarly, similar to what he does with his artwork. So he was my professor first, and we became collaborators also. And we did very important projects, and one of them was the artwork outdoor sculpture for the Ethiopian embassy in Washington, D.C. It was 60 feet by 9 feet high, aluminum sculpture, and it took us 2 years to complete it.
Wow.
Not only the execution of it, but the thinking of how to bring those pieces together without neglecting the power of who commissioned you, and also how to play it safely to make it free of any kind of political influences. So that took us quite a while, even the thinking of it and how to negotiate and how to navigate with your funders. But finally, we created something that could stay for, quote unquote, forever, because we succeeded to make it apolitical, and we considered the cultural aspect of Ethiopia mostly, and we talked about, for instance, different types of spiritual practices in this land, not only necessarily the Judeo-Christian, Islamic, religious practices, but we considered, others less known. So, the spiritual aspect of, the country is one part of it, and secondly, we tried also to divide the whole land, into the lowland and highland, division, which takes us towards, acknowledging the topography and also rare animals and plants, etc. And to the cultural aspect of it, that also includes, music and performances. All those are, symbolic, forms that we used, and that helped us actually to move away from the politics.
The political side.
Yeah.
Wow, that must be beautiful. It took you 2 years.
Yes, yeah. You're going to be disappointed. Because we finished the work in 2000. I didn't plan to talk about this, but I think I have to, because we finished the work in 2000, and it had been one of the landmarks for students around Washington area, college students mainly, that majored in architecture or art, and they would go there, and it was one of the visiting spots, and it was well preserved until I found out that I don't even know when that happened, and the embassy decided to create this huge security stand right in front of it.
Oh my God!
And you can imagine this is 60 feet long, horizontal sculpture, and the distance between part of the sculpture and the stand is, 2 steps or 3 steps. Wow. So part of it is blocked.
I can't see it.
Yeah. And I have been trying to talk to somebody, and there was some glimpse of hope with the previous ambassador. Now he's not in the position, and I would have to start from the scratch. So this is really, huge preservation that should be done, to maintain and to secure that historic, artwork, and nobody seems to acknowledge that.
Wow.
So yes.
What inspires your sculptural work compared to your paintings? Or can we even compare them?
My sculptures are really not quite sculptures. They are in between. Actually, I prefer to call them pliable sculptures, because these are not hard-edged and they're not freestanding. So they resemble painting, and also they resemble, sculpture. So this was one of the theoretical exploration that I did. I started working on that kind of, form 20-something years ago. So I had to study what kind of material would be feasible to the idea that I would like to talk about through them. And I had to also come up with the technique, because these are works without any prior examples, especially when it comes to the material. So I studied the technique, and I started working on them. So most of them are huge. They turned into big installations, sometimes from ceiling to floor, etc.
How has your experience as an educator shaped your artistic practice?
Good question. I think there is a great deal of feedback between teaching and working. Number one, when you teach from experience, and as a practitioner, anything that challenged you and anything that helped you to solve that challenge is going to be very instrumental in teaching your students. But we don't teach techniques, and you teach techniques at their level, not the techniques that you are creating, after you went through some loops and steps. But in general, the thinking or the idea of solving any kind of visual problem is going to be extremely useful. On the other hand, you also learn from your students, and specifically when I was teaching graduate level courses at Howard University, students came from all places, outside of the United States, from different places in the U.S. So they all brought their own reflection on the work that they would like to do. And you read their thesis, you discover new things yourself, and you also try to help them. So that reading, that familiarity or exposure that you would get from your students' work is transformational. So there is a great deal of feedback.
Before I go to the next question, I would like to know, how did you become, or what How did you become an educator? What led you into becoming an educator?
It's funny. I mean, I wouldn't even know because when we were very young, I mean, my sister used to talk about her preferences, in terms of in the future leading her life as a teacher, and I wasn't even considering it. So I always considered art or writing and things like that. But when I was at Howard as a graduate student, I got this opportunity to be a TA, teaching assistant. So that might be something that really inspired me to teach. And the other thing is to be able to live or to make a living as an artist is challenging anywhere in the world, and not only in Ethiopia. I mean, a lot of young artists were telling me, the dilemma that they have about being an artist. So I was also conflicted whether it was going to be a good choice for me, to stay as a studio artist or to teach. And both are not, the field of teaching in art itself is very tight. It's not uncommon, for instance, when you apply for a teaching job as an artist, you would be competing with 400 and 300 applicants, and they take only one out of that.
That's tough.
But the main interest in teaching was, for me, my art is not always about something that could be sellable, easily. I'm not a landscape artist, even though I know how to create landscape or still life or portraiture. So my content is not, something that is going to be accessible to everybody.
Everybody.
Yeah. And I don't want to think about selling or not selling, so teaching was the best option for me. And it doesn't mean that I don't sell my works. I do, but I don't have to stress, over that. So that helped.
What significant works do your works hold in places like the Illinois Holocaust Museum and the Ethiopian Embassy?
The Ethiopian Embassy, its significance is its success in terms of representing Ethiopia that could stay for a long time, because again, when governments change, they bring their own policies. If you are focusing on that political reflection, then you shorten the existence of that artwork. So we're so proud of the artwork that it could be staying for a long time. So that's huge. That's significant. In terms of its aesthetics, it's pretty much modern. And that was one of the reasons that most colleges and universities around the Washington, D.C. area, would recommend their students to look at that artwork. So aesthetically, it was also successful. So that's one. The Holocaust Museum, they collected that work when they created the museum itself. So the one thing that Holocaust Museum did very well is they wanted to expand the issue of humanity beyond the Holocaust. So they tried to collect arcs from all corners of the world, as much as possible. That reflected on human condition. So I created that artwork that they bought. The title is The River in Rwanda. The same day I looked at the tragedy on TV, And I was in graduate school, I remember, and usually I work in series. So that day I was working on a different series for 3 or 4 months. So I primed the canvas and I let it dry, and in between I turned the TV just to watch what was going on around the world. And the first thing that I saw was this horrible mutilated image, the river. So then I switched to this new theme, and from that day on until I finished my series, I started working on the Rwanda, genocide. So luckily, they discovered, what I was working, and they collected it.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank
That's
you.
Lovely. How do you see your role as an artist in addressing social justice today?
I think I am committed, and I have been committed, and that's what I have been doing since I came to the United States. And my undergraduate thesis was similar to the topics that I did in graduate school, but the expression and the fluency, of course, changed through time. And even after my graduation, that's what I'm doing. Expressions, change. Aesthetics would be different. You always think also about not only the content, but what your place is and in the art world. And I want to speak, a language that's going to be feasible for the 21st century. I will have to understand, my time.
Yeah, right.
So it combines both, both the content and, the artwork.
What message do you hope people take away from your exhibits?
It's hard, and it differs, I would assume, from place to place. I don't speak the realistic language anymore. And my artwork is both, transitioning from abstract to non-objective, etc. And depending on where I am exhibiting, depending on the audience, the level of exposure that they have around the arts. But so far, the feedback was pretty much positive. And I want to believe that they are getting the messages that I would like to convey, and I'm happy about it.
Beautiful. How long has it been since the last time you came to Ethiopia?
I stayed in Addis for 4 days, if that counts. If that counts, in 2017.
Okay.
Passing through Addis, going to Uganda for a project. So that's the last time.
And you came through.
Yeah.
Okay. The reason why I asked was, of course there are a lot of changes since the last time you came. But besides the changes, one of the things that I witnessed when I came at the art school, you had a program there, and when I heard you talk, and when I heard everybody else from the audience talk and speaking about you, everybody was so excited that you were there and you said what you said. So what I'm trying to say is, this is your last comment that you are going to make. From what you have gathered from that day, and since you've been in Addis, you've met a few of the artists that are here. I don't want to say advise, but if you would tell us how to continue in a sense where, even for the artists for that matter, how they should pursue what they love. Because from what I gathered, you pursued your passion throughout your journey. So for us to do that, to be able to push through whatever obstacles that come to you and be able to actually come out of that and be who you want to be or what you want to do, Because you're also an educator, right? But one other question after this one.
You said this is the last
I
one.
know, I know. But then after I said it, I was like, wait, I didn't ask that question. Or maybe I should ask that first.
Okay.
Do you have any intentions of coming to Ethiopia to teach?
That was my dream, for a long time, actually, since I was in graduate school. And my friend, Elizabeth Habtold, who spoke, we always talked about what we want to do and why we want to do it. And we wanted to teach at art school, even going during summer times and giving some courses, because we were fortunate to be able to go out and get an education. And to our surprises, we learned about African arts in America. We didn't learn it here while we are here. So we know, at least at that time, what was offered to the students and what was not offered. So our wish was, to go back home and to contribute, in small ways. It doesn't have to be really big. Then we graduated, and she was brave enough, to move to Ethiopia, and she's, contributing, to the arts in here. So in my part, what I was able to do was to apply for a Fulbright, program. There are two types. One is for student exchange. The other one is scholars exchange. So you know how competitive it is from the United States side. And I passed the first stage twice. And I had the initial support from the art school, but that's not enough. Once you are selected from the US side, Ethiopia also needed to make, its own selection. Okay. So I was not selected, twice from here. Okay. So that didn't give me a chance to teach. But, I still want to. And sometimes you feel obligated because you have to contribute, and that's your country. And I'm always hopeful one day you might have a chance.
I wish you luck on that one.
Yeah.
So now the end is yours. Your last words to our future artists.
This is one of the toughest questions because I think the artists know what they want to do, but they need a lot of help. And it's not an individual effort sometimes that gets you somewhere. I wish there are going to be programs at large that benefits, artists, because anybody who chooses to be an artist must have had that strong, field to pursue that passion. But it's not enough. So it depends on the country, I would say. What kind of programs do we have? What kind of exposure students get at a young age? And what is the support that they get from the government or the society once, they become, artists? So it is very hard to tell the artists, how they should do it.
Oh, yeah.
Very difficult because it's a communal thing. There needs to be a program. So I can't give really advice. If they had the opportunity, they exactly know what they want to do.
Beautiful. That's good enough. Okay. That's good enough. The one thing is always pursue what is in your heart.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, I thank you so much for giving me this opportunity.
My pleasure.
Have a safe trip back.
Thank you so much.
We'll see you next time.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. This is your Pan-African show called Afreeqa with your host, Qasala Seifu. Thank you again.